If you're just starting out on your sewing journey, the chances are you're looking for a sewing machine, and there are plenty of options out there to choose from. But what sort should you go for? Should you go vintage or should you go modern? I'm Ollie, this is Simply Stitchy. Let's find out, come on. The first thing that we need to look at is what is meant by the term vintage, and what sewing machines can actually be referred to as vintage sewing machines. To answer that question, we need to explore the definition of the word vintage and its origins. Now, vintage isn't a term that's specific to sewing machines. The word actually refers to wine, and it's the age of the wine, or rather it's the year or the season that it was produced. So it's the vine age, if you like. Over time, the word vintage has been borrowed or slightly hijacked to refer to anything that's got a little bit of an age to it. And because of that, as a term to describe age, it can be a little bit vague. The general consensus is to be vintage, an object has to be 20 years old or older. Now that age usually goes up to 99 years old, because when it hits 100, that object becomes an antique. And rather than being vague, the age of an antique is set as an industry standard across the board. All antique dealers will recognise an object that's 100 years old and older as being an antique. Having said that, and to confuse the issue even further, sewing machine collectors, me included, tend to refer to our antique machines as vintage, because saying that you sew with an antique sewing machine just sounds a little bit more scary than saying that you sew with a vintage sewing machine. I mean, should we be sewing with the antiques, or should they be in a museum for everybody to see? That's a debate for a different video. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to be referring to vintage sewing machines as being any machine that was built in or before 2003, because that's 20 years ago. You feeling old yet? Modern machines will be 2004 up to the present day. Having got that out of the way, let's now take a look at vintage and modern machines and the pros and cons of each one, so that I can help you work out what age machine you should be looking at. And we're going to start with vintage. Another word that can be used to describe vintage is used. Depending on the age of the machine, they could have had more than one owner since they left the factory. They are unlikely to be new in box or even in mint condition. Some can, but most of them are like second-hand cars. There's more than a few miles on their clocks. One of the advantages of vintage is age. Because of their age, they're more likely to be made out of all metal parts, which means they stand a good chance of being able to last just that little bit longer. And metal parts on the inside of your machine will also enable the inner workings to last just that little bit longer too. The next thing that's good about vintage machines is because of their age, they tend to have affordable prices. People tend to get rid of older machines when they want to upgrade to new ones, so you can get a really good model for a decent price. Another really good advantage about a vintage machine is you've got a choice of power options. Take Grandma here. She's my Singer 27 treadle from 1912. She's people powered. You don't need electricity to be able to run a vintage machine, or rather an antique machine like this one. These machines are all easy to maintain yourself. You can oil them yourself, you can take them apart yourself, you can find new parts for them and install them yourself. You don't have to take them to an expensive service centre to have them fixed by somebody else just to keep a warranty up to date. Another great thing about these machines is they're basic, and because of that they tend to be more mechanical than computerised, which means they've got less to go wrong with them. But it's not all good news. Vintage and antique machines can have a few negatives too. And before any of you start kicking off in the comments, I'm not anti-vintage machine, I'm a vintage sewing machine collector and I love them to bits. But I'm not going to sugarcoat this. They do have some points that some people might find annoying. One of the biggest disadvantages with vintage sewing machines is their age. Now, depending on what age your vintage sewing machine is, whether it's 100 years old or more like Grandma here, or it dates back to the 80s like the pink one behind me, the Singer Merit, you might find that they've got accessories missing, like the sewing presser foot, for instance. There was a time when people used to take the presser foot off to store the machines, which meant that the presser foot and the machine got separated. You might even find out that the machine is worn out, that it doesn't work. And depending on how old that machine is, you may find that it's difficult to get replacement parts to get that machine back up and running. Some vintage sewing machines aren't exactly user-friendly. Take this vintage Singer Touch and Sew, for instance. Its controls are a range of different levers and knobs, and you have to get the right combination of these levers and knobs to get the stitch that you want. It's not always easy to work out where you need to put each lever, particularly if it's a vintage sewing machine that you can no longer find a manual for. Another disadvantage with vintage sewing machines is the access to information on how to use them, how to work them, how to thread them. Another disadvantage is the actual weight of vintage sewing machines. Now, if you go for something like this Singer 99 from 1942, she's made out of cast iron, which means that even though she is a 3/4 size machine, which means she's smaller than some of the bigger ones like the Singer 27, she still weighs the best part of 30 pounds. Another thing that you need to consider is there's no after sales service with a vintage sewing machine. If you're going to buy something that dates back to the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, or even further back than that, there's no after sales care. There's no shop that you can go to get support. You can't go online and talk your problems through with a chat line, if you like. You're on your own. And it's more likely that with a machine as old as these that you'll have to do your own servicing. It is incredibly difficult to find a service centre that is happy to work on vintage sewing machines, because the skills base for most sewing machine technicians these days is geared towards modern machines. Another thing that you need to bear in mind is, in order to get some of the modern day functions that we take for granted on an older machine, is you're looking at getting a gadget or an attachment to fit to that machine in order for you to be able to make use of that feature, particularly for the cast iron machines that date back to the 40s, the 30s, and even further back than that. This contraption is the button holder that came with Grandma. So not only do you have to learn how to use your vintage machine, but sometimes you have to use gadgets like this and learn how to use them too. Modern machines come with the very latest in up-to-date technology. They are cutting edge. Many of them have got automatic functions, particularly the computerized models that you can get. They're pretty much plug and play. Switch them on, sew. That's all there is to it. Particularly with this Janome and this brother here, they've both got automatic tension, so you don't have to mess with them. If you buy them from either a dealer or from a big box store, you'll find that they come with a warranty. So if anything goes wrong, if any parts break, you can get them repaired as part of that warranty. If you buy from a dealer, like I did with this one, you also get after sales care. Some dealers also offer classes that will teach you how to use the machine and show you what the different functions do. And you've got access to a helpline. You've got online chat. You could pop back into the dealer and say, this isn't working, what am I doing wrong? You have the support and the aftercare or after sales service that you need to make the best out of your machine. Modern machines, this brother, oops, the Janome, and even this basic Singer Simple in the middle have automatic needle threaders, which, if your eyesight's starting to go, are the best thing since sliced bread. There's no need to get to grips with any weird looking external gadgets or attachments to do different features, because things like zigzag and buttonholes are all built into the machines. Even this basic entry-level Singer Simple has a built-in 4-step buttonhole. Speed is something else that's great about modern machines. Both this Janome and this brother here have a speed control which will override your foot pedal. So depending on whether you've got this on slow or fast, that's how fast that the machine will go. And this comes in useful if you want to make sure that even if you put your foot flat to the floor, you won't go any faster than slow. For beginners, or even if you're teaching a child to sew, that is an incredible safety feature. Better still, these machines, modern machines, can sew modern fabrics. Modern machines also have their fair share of disadvantages. The main one, modern machines aren't as easy to work on for yourself. You'll probably find that if you go for a modern one, like this brother, which is last year's model, you have to take it to an authorised service repair centre. In brother's case, that means you have to mail it to a brother service centre, which can be inconvenient. You can't work on these machines yourself because obviously if they're a new model you will void your warranty. Accessories for modern sewing machines can work out a little bit pricey, particularly if you have to go with brand specific accessories. Not all modern sewing machines will take generic feet, for instance, and sometimes that means the difference between a couple of bucks and more likely about 60 bucks for a sewing machine foot to fit your machine. Another slight disadvantage with modern machines is plastic. Most modern machines have plastic exteriors. Now most of the modern machines that do have an outer casing of plastic like this do have metal insides, which does give them a little bit of weight and a little bit of stability. But even so, the plastic on the outside of the machines is capable of breaking. It is plastic after all. One of the things that you do have to be wary about with modern machines is a lot of them, like this embroidery machine and Jerome behind me, have computer chips, and as we all know from our phones, our TVs and our computers, computer chips don't last forever. They will wear out and they will break, and they're not always easy or cheap to replace. There is slightly more to go wrong on a modern machine than a basic vintage machine, and your repair bill is likely to be just that little bit higher simply because these are more tricky to fix yourself. Now that we've looked at the pros and cons of vintage and modern sewing machines, which one should you go for? Well, at the end of the day, that's entirely up to you. What you need to be doing is finding a sewing machine that's going to suit your needs, and to do that there are 4 different things that you need to keep in mind when you're choosing a sewing machine. Number 1, your budget. Work out how much you can comfortably afford on a sewing machine and stick to it. Number 2, your skill level. If you are literally just starting out on your sewing journey and you haven't as much as sewn in a straight line yet, go for a basic machine. One that doesn't have too many bells and whistles, and one that's not going to confuse you or intimidate you so much so that you don't want to get it out of the box. Number 3, Consider what it is that got you interested in sewing in the first place. What is it that you want to sew? If you're going to be sewing a lot of knits, for instance, then you'd be better off with a sewing machine that's got a zigzag stitch. Number 4, and this one's probably the most important. Whatever sewing machine you're thinking of buying, make sure that it works. Go to where the sewing machine is, take some fabric with you and see that machine in action. You need to make sure that the sewing machine that you're interested in has the functions that you need to do the sewing that you want to do. And once you've found that machine, then it doesn't matter if it's vintage or modern, its age is irrelevant. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And why not go and check out some of the other videos I've got on my channel by using these links coming up on screen any minute now, or the ones I'll pop in the description box below for you. And why not subscribe and click that little bell that's just down there too, so that YouTube can give you a notification when I upload another video. Whatever video you go and check out next, I hope to see you back here for the next one. And in the meantime, whatever you're sewing it with, embrace your creativity and have fun. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.